Now I'm gonna prepare the vanilla buttercream for the finishing coat on the strawberry cake. So I'm just taking off the lid, just lifting up the plastic wrap, and because it's been in the fridge, it's gonna be a little hard, so I'm not gonna be able to get nice big scoops of buttercream out. So I'm just gonna shave at it. Hey, if you're really, you can also use a metal spoon. That would definitely help you really dig into this stuff. I don't have a metal spoon, so I'm just using my spatula. And this is the size of the bowl that I'm going to use for the finishing coat on the cake. I might need a little bit more to completely decorate the exterior of the cake, but I think that this amount of buttercream will be more than enough for the outside, or the final coat of buttercream on the cake. Having buttercream in these smaller bits will actually help me out when softening it in the microwave. Also, you can just leave this out for a couple of hours before you start doing this. That'll definitely help the buttercream soften. But I wanted to show you as many different ways to reconstitute or bring your bring your buttercream back to room temperature, so it's easy to handle. We're going to stop right here with this amount of buttercream in the bowl. I'm not sure if it's enough, but I'm just curious to see how much I can get from it. So I'm just going to stick my spatula in there, just loosely recover my main bowl of buttercream with the plastic wrap, and just sort of place the lid on top, just to make sure that, it's not exposed to the air. You can also completely remove the spatula and, set it aside somewhere and firmly place the lid back on the bowl. But because I don't know how much more buttercream I'll be needing, I didn't do that. So next we'll go to the microwave. So there's my bowl of buttercream in the microwave. And now I'm just going to shut the door and start heating up the buttercream. I'm sorry it's not in focus. So I'm going to go to my favorite power level and speed, which is 2. I know that at power level 2, things can't really get away from me. They'll be nice and slow so I can monitor what's happening and what I want to do. And I think I'm just going to do it for 30 seconds, this first round, just to get a general idea of how the microwave, how quickly the buttercream is softening in the microwave, and just to figure out where I really want to keep the time at. So that was 30 seconds. Power level 2, and I know that it's not enough. I'm just gonna lightly touch the buttercream. My hands are clean. I'm just gonna lightly touch it to get a gauge of how soft it is. It's still really firm. So this time I'm gonna do power level 2 for 45 seconds. And yes, you can definitely increase your speed and or your power level. Increase your power level and do it much faster than I'm doing it. It's just in the past, I've gotten distracted by other things and forgotten to keep an eye on my buttercream, so this just works the best for me. Alright, so the buttercream has been in the microwave for about a minute and 10 seconds, and it's starting to soften a little bit. So I'm just gonna do one more round in the microwave, and actually I don't know, I can do it at power level 2, or I can do 10 second intervals. I think I'll do 10-second intervals because that'll give me the results that I'm looking for the most, and I'm here, so it can't very quickly get out of hand. So one 10-second interval is what I'm going to do at full power, and we'll see what that gives us. I'm hoping that gives me exactly what I want. So here we are, power level 10 seconds. And we're going to start. I'm really eyeballing the buttercream, just looking at it, making sure everything is cool. It's not melting too much. Alright, so that's it. It's 10 seconds. And compared to what it looked like when I first put it in the microwave, I think we're good to go. So we're going to stop right there and put this buttercream on the mixer to re-whip it. So that's what my buttercream looks like directly from the microwave. I just put it in the bowl. So it looks super soupy and loose, which is exactly what I wanted. So I'm going to add just maybe 1 to 2 more scoops of the straight from the refrigerator buttercream, and then I think that will give me the perfect consistency of buttercream that I'm looking for. So I've put in 2 fairly sized good scoops of buttercream directly from the refrigerated bowl into the mixer. Now I'm just going to put the paddle attachment on. Lock the mixer and just turn it on low speed. Ha! I have to plug it in first. I'll be right back. Alright, so the mixer is plugged in now. I'm just going to turn it on low speed. Looking really good. The heat from the buttercream that I semi-melted in the microwave is really helping to soften the refrigerated buttercream directly from the bowl. I like the way it looks, so I'm just going to increase the speed of the mixer. I'm just going to let that whip for maybe a couple of seconds more, and then we'll be all set to move on to finishing the strawberry. So that is how the buttercream looks after about 3 minutes of whipping on medium speed, or mixing on medium speed, however you want to say it. Now I am going to get my cake turntable, put my chilled cake on the turntable, and start putting on the final coat of buttercream. Alright, so now is the time to finish my cake. You can do this in 2 ways. You can put your chilled cake directly into the turntable without an additional cake round. I'm going to do this just because my decorating plan for this cake is pretty simple. So I'm not going to do anything elaborate, and so I believe that transferring the cake to this board after I've done the decorations, even if it's chilled, might mess up the bottom border of the cake. So my cake board is here that I'm going to have the finished cake on. I'm just going to take a little bit of buttercream, not a lot, just enough to stick the other cake board to it. You can also use anything else at your disposal, particularly if you're doing a fruit-based cake like me. You could use maybe jam, or even a little syrup, just something to ensure that the cake will in fact stick to, or the cake board will stick to the other cake board. So I've just picked up my chilled cake from the bottom of my cake container the same way that I removed it and placed it inside my cake container. You'll see me do this again with some of the other cakes. And now here's my cake, and I'm just gonna put my offset spatula right under it, and I'm just gonna gently remove my hand from there, and I can see right away that my cake is not really in the center of this cake round. And just because this is where, or to excuse my words, this is the cake's final resting place, I'm going to try the best that I can to make sure that the cake is centered on the round. I mean, it's not, vitally important, particularly because this cake is for me. It's not for a client, or I'm not giving it as a gift to anyone. But just generally try to get it as centered as possible. And because I did cut the 7-inch round that the chilled cake is currently on freehand, it's not going to be exactly a perfect circle. But I'm pleased with where the cake is right now, so that's where I'm going to leave it. And this is always the difficult part for me. So I've got my larger offset spatula, which you can't see. I've got my larger offset spatula right here under the cake, and I'm going to take my smaller offset spatula again, which you just ding the side of the cake, but that's okay. I'm going to take my smaller offset spatula right here. I'm going to gently lift up the cake as much as possible to sort of break the seal that's been created with the larger offset spatula. And then just gently, I'm going to move both offset spatulas out from under the cake. And that's generally how I place the cake on the cake board. But I see right here that the cake has shifted a little bit more than I wanted from the center. And that's fine. Again, you can I just gently sort of nudge the edge of the board with my small offset spatula, just rotating the cake stand or turntable just to make sure it's as even as it's going to be. As I said before, it's not going to be perfectly even because I did cut this by hand and I'm not a machine, so it won't be exact, but just as long as it appears relatively centered, I am pleased. Alright, so I'm going to stop right there. And now I'm going to start putting the final coat of buttercream on this cake. I've decided to try to do a more of a rustic pattern, so I'm just going to take my glob of buttercream and move it up and down the sides of the cake. Now, because the cake is cold, it may be difficult to do this. It might get quite firm, but that's okay, taking that into account. So just up and down, and I went a little too deep there. It's more of a gliding motion. I know I went too deep because I could see the strawberry buttercream from where I was, so just going to add an additional layer. I'm trying to create sort of like a spackle effect on the side of the cake. And that's just because, I don't know, I wanted to try something a little bit different. I've not actually ever done this type of finish on the side of the cake before. So right there, I got on as much of the buttercream as I want, and so now I'm just gently gliding the offset spatula up and down the sides to make striations in the buttercream, similar to sort of like a tree bark. That's what I'm trying to get going on. So you just continue to do the same. Put on the layers of buttercream on the side of the cake. And it's as much as you personally want, because I do have the crumb coat on the side of the cake. I'm going to try to keep the amount of buttercream that I add as minimal as possible. Simply because, you know, as I said before, buttercream is essentially just butter, and I know people in particular are not a fan of eating straight butter. I mean, I know there must be some people out there who do enjoy it, but it's not generally the best mouthfeel for people. So, there it is again. Just taking up a small amount of buttercream, placing it on the sides of the cake. Gently just trying to make sure that it's an even coat before I go back and do the finishing striations. Now I just did this section here to show you what the final product would look like, but now I'm just, you know, going to go around the cake and make sure I have the layer of buttercream that I want on the sides of the cake. But I am being extra careful to make sure that I don't get too much excess buttercream on the cake board, just because, as I said before, this will be my final presentation for the cake. And right here, my cake goes in a little, and so I'm adding a bit more buttercream in this section than I would, or that I have on the other sections of the cake. And even when something like this happens, where my glob of buttercream kind of fell down on the cake board, if you just patiently, gently work at it and try to gently push it back up the sides of the cake, it won't leave too much of a mess on your cake board. But also, I realize that this is vanilla buttercream, so it doesn't have any additional color, so the risk of it messing up the cake board is also minimal. But I would do the same with chocolate buttercream or what have you. Well, probably not with chocolate buttercream, or if I was finishing this cake with strawberry buttercream, I would just have the chilled cake here. I wouldn't have the finishing board. And before I did final decorating steps for the cake, I would have chilled it again in the fridge, just to make sure everything was nice and firm before I started moving the cake around. So I'm just going to continue with this, and I will come back when I have finished putting the buttercream all around the sides of the cake. Alright, so I've got the entire, all of the sides of the cake covered in vanilla buttercream. So now it's just about eyeballing the sides of the cake to make sure I feel like the buttercream is as even as I can get it, even with the striations. Like for instance here, there's a bit of a bulge of buttercream. I used a little bit more buttercream on this side than on the other side of the cake. So I'm just going to push up the excess, forcing it to the top of the cake. And it looks pretty good to me. Let's clean that up also. So, again, I mean, you know, it's not exactly perfect, but it looks pretty good to me. So again, like I did previously, I'm just going to take the tip of my offset spatula, and there is an example of me going too deep, not gliding enough on the surface that poked through to the strawberry buttercream. And in that case, again, you take a little bit more buttercream and you just glide it back over, like so. So again, I'm just going to take the tip of my offset spatula. I'm just going to make sure it's as clean as possible before I start. And then I'm just going to lightly graze the side of the cake. And you can do it as close together or as spaced out as you want. I don't really know what I want to do. I'm thinking closer together is going to work the best for me. But again, I could switch it up, say, and since this is really just to show you, I could do one close and one narrow. So close or wide, and then narrow, and then more wide. It's really up to you. It's whatever floats your boat. The more I look at it, the more I think I like the idea of it being a little bit more random. So I'm not going to really try to track where I am. I'm just going to do whatever. And when it gets to this point where you have about that much buttercream on your offset spatula, I just clean it off on the side of the bowl, and I just keep going. So that's it for the sides of the cake. Really simple and easy. So now I'm just going to take a good, not a good amount, a fair amount of buttercream. And I'm just going to sort of plop it onto the top of the cake. Or just throw it, as I just threw that. And I'm just going to pause to readjust the camera. Alright, so now I'm on the top of the cake, and you can see here from the edge that I have a fair amount of residue from the sides of the cake. So I'm just going to gently pull that in before I start smoothing out the buttercream, just so I can get a general idea of where the edge of the cake is. Just so I know where to stop or where to add more. Like for instance, I don't really have to add too much to this section, but I do have a big void here and then right in this area. So I'm just gonna sort of push away from the edge where I know I have a lot. Just like when you're assembling the cake, push towards the areas where you don't have enough buttercream. So I'll just add a little bit more. And just continue to smooth out the buttercream. And to the best of my ability, I am going to try to emulate the striations on the side of the cake, on the top of the cake. I don't know how well I'm going to be at it, or how well I'm going to do at it. But I'm going to give it my best effort. So here again, I'm just going to take any excess off the sides to again help me figure out where the edge of the cake is, but also to remove some of this buttercream that I put on because I didn't need it all, but I wanted a nice window or cushion of buttercream just to make sure that I covered the entire cake. And there are some imperfections here, you know, there are some gaps. But because I want this cake to be a little bit more rustic looking, since it's sort of the end of summer, the beginning of fall. Oh, I took too much off there, but that's okay. I'll just smooth it over. So now I'm looking and I see like right here I have some stuff just hanging out. So I'm just going to gently glide the spatula over these areas to just try to clean up as much as I can. I see I have also some holes or thin spots. So I'm just going to push it where I want it, or place it where I want it, and then try to gently move the buttercream around. Alright, so everything is pretty much covered to my liking. And I'm just going to try to use the outside edge of the spatula just to kind of smooth out as much of the surface of the cake as possible. I mean, clearly you can see it's not 100% smooth. And now I'm going to try to do my little striations over the top of the cake. So I'm going to start in the middle and then just work my way out, trying to duplicate the pattern and direction that I have going on the sides of the cake. You can go back and forth or in one direction. I find one direction works the best for me. It gives me the most control over how much pressure I'm putting on the cake. And so that's it right there. And because I want people to know that there is strawberry in this cake, I am going to put some dollops of buttercream on the top with the piping bag, but I want to try to make them a little bit more random and not so precise. So we're going to see what I can come up with in the moment. And they're just going to go around the edge right here. So pretty much hiding wherever my buttercream from the sides of the cake connects with the top of the cake. Alright, so I just realized that my camera wasn't on at all. So I've done here sort of a fleur-de-lis, sort of scallopy pattern on the top of the cake, and I will take this time to get a piece of wax paper to show you what I was planning. Let's just move this. So that's my wax paper, And imagine, if you will, that this is my cake round. So actually, I'm just going to take one of my cakes that I have waiting to finish and decorate. So here's the cake. Here's my piping bag, and I told you it's just the piping bags that I have on hand. They're quite large, and I have far more buttercream in here than I need. But I wanted to make sure that I could get a nice, good, solid grip on the bag, and I had to have a good amount of pressure. So there it is. And I cut just the tiniest tip off the bottom of the bag. So you hold on. I know that here it is. So this is the amount of the piping bag that I cut off. So not too much, just a small amount, just so I can get a little hole in the piping bag. And because I mentioned before, I'm going for a more rustic looking cake, I wanted to keep the piping also a little bit unfinished and not super smooth. So I didn't use a piping tip, I just have the hole in the bag. And because I have 6 berries that I want to put on my cake, I started by just first piping here, so a little bit of pressure and then no pressure going towards the center or moving diagonally. So just like that. Then I rotated the cake and I did the same in the opposite direction. So just like that. And then since I had sort of my place markers, I then rotated the cake again and figured out that, this is my middle line. So I wanted to place my remaining piped elements sort of just off to the sides of those. So again, this is the middle, this is how I'm gauging it. So I'm just going to put one right here. One right there. And then the other one sort of right here in this area. And then, I rotate the cake again. And then just do the same thing. So this would be the middle line. So I'm just gonna place the piping just off to the sides of my center line. And I also mentioned that, if you're not super comfortable piping, this would be the time where you would get a piece of wax paper like I've just done to show you what I did when my camera wasn't recording. And just practice. Just practice, practice, practice. Practice makes everything better. Because I don't know myself too many people who picked up a piping bag and were immediately confident in their piping skills and felt like, they didn't need to do any more. And the practice is just one to familiarize your body with doing the motion, so muscle memory, but also to help you figure out what works best for you, how holding the bag works best for you, how much pressure is too much, how much pressure is too little. And it's really just practice makes perfect. So that's what you missed when I wasn't recording. So I'll get back to the cake now. So as I mentioned before, I wanted to keep this cake pretty simple, decoratively. So I just have these small berries that I thought would be perfect for the top of the cake. I have 6. So I'm just going to place them just right on top of the buttercream, just like that, right where the fleur-de-lis elements would meet. And as you can see when I'm placing them, some are a little bit closer together than others, and that's totally fine. If it is a major issue for you, you can always, you can always change it up. But that's it. That's how I'm choosing to finish my cake. It looks really different, and I like that. It's not how I would normally decorate the cake. Normally, I would have way more berries on top. It would be super symmetrical, and there'd probably be 8 strawberries on top in the slices. But I wanted to try something a little bit different, just because I know, you might not have the best skill level right now, and since I do have other cakes that I have to decorate for this particular project, I just wanted to try this out, and I wanted to sort of place the strawberries in a way where they're going in the same direction as the striations in the cake. So that's it for the strawberry cake. I lied, that's not it. I also wanted to show you just quickly how I clean the edge of the cake board once the cake is done. I'm not going to have a piped border at the bottom, so I'm just going to go around the edge of the cake, moving the turntable with a paper towel. That's how I like to do it, just because, this board is coated. It is coated, and the buttercream just does sort of sit on top. So I just like to take a corner of the paper towel, get it as flush to the cake as possible without touching the cake, and just use my finger as a guide to just go around the perimeter and clean up any buttercream that I have there that's sticking out. And so that's it. That's how I clean the cake board, and now this cake will go back into the fridge to chill while I finish the other cakes. Once I finish the other cakes, I'll slice all of these cakes so you can get a look at how they look on the inside, and then that will be it.